Pam Judy lives below this one compressor station here. You can see the top of the one building that there was 3 compressors there, and they were all open. So what they did, they heard, well, when Pam did some research and digging, I guess, they closed them in. They've been closing them all in now. She has experienced some illnesses.
I lost my mother in September to mesothelioma from exposure to asbestos. And to me, this is very similar because we have both our government, federal, state, and local, all telling us this is not harmful, and we have industry telling us this is not harmful. That's the very same thing that happened with asbestos when they began using asbestos, and then we learn years later exactly what happens. And my family actually, suffered the consequences of that. I lost my mother because of it, and that is really a fear of mine. My name's Pam Judy. I live in Carmichaels, Greene County, Pennsylvania. We moved into this home in 2005. For the first 3 years of our life, we had a wonderful life, and then 3 years after we moved in, there was a compressor station that went into basically our backyard. It's on an adjoining property owner's land, 780 feet from our home. I have 2 children, ages 27 and 21, and my husband. We live here.
I'm Joe Osborne. I'm the legal director of the group Against Smog and Pollution. There are a number of public health and environmental concerns related to air emissions from this industry. Anytime natural gas is combusted, it's producing nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide. Anytime natural gas is leaked to the atmosphere, that's producing methane. That's primarily what natural gas is methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. It's producing VOCs, it's producing hazardous air pollutants, things like benzene. So there are certainly emissions associated with this industry.
If you would look at where the last tree is in that fence row, I am right down over that hill.
And what's over here?
This is the compressor station. I said this is what I consider my piece of Marcellus hell. I don't use the word shale, I use hell.
Where do the winds come from?
The winds are typically blowing into my yard. In June of last year, there was actually a study conducted by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. One canister was placed in our backyard for 24 hours, and they found 16 chemicals in our backyard, 20 feet outside our door, some of which were benzene, styrene, toluene, hexane, heptane, acetone. There was literally a Molotov cocktail of chemicals in our backyard. Exposure to benzene particularly can lead to bloodborne cancers, such as leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Maybe if I, breathe this for 5 minutes, I'm not going to have a problem. Breathing this for 20 or 30 years on a daily basis, you can't help but have a problem.
DEP studies, they have value, but I think that the media, maybe some people in industry, have taken those studies to mean more than they actually do, to say more than they actually said. These were short-term studies. They were at any single site for maybe 4 days, 3 days. The equipment they used often was not capable of detecting pollution at levels that would be a threat in terms of long-term exposure. Sometimes the equipment wasn't sensitive enough to detect pollution at levels that would be a harm for a short period of exposure. So the study wasn't perfect in that regard. But also, if you're only at a site for 4 days, 3 days, that's much different than if you live near one of these sites 365 days a year.
If you do a little research, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, but a little research on any of those chemicals will tell you that the symptoms that we are experiencing are all consequences of being exposed to those chemicals. Within a few short months of the compressor going online, we began experiencing headaches, sore throats, our noses, our nasal passages would burn. We have had, my children have both had nosebleeds, my son 4 in one day. We have had, I particularly have had vertigo, was taken to the emergency room, subsequently sent to an ear, nose, and throat specialist for them to examine my ears just to make sure. They found nothing. My son has had, in November of last year, he was outside looking for deer, preparing for deer season, and was up in the general vicinity of the compressor station. And the next day, I started having some problems with his throat. That evening, the next day, he had blisters in his mouth that got progressively worse. And on Thanksgiving morning, he was in the emergency room because he couldn't eat or swallow.
The kinds of complaints that she reports, we often hear these kinds of complaints.
How often?
I mean, I'm aware of easily a dozen individuals who have reported these kinds of complaints who live near compressor stations.
How do you feel about this?
I'm angry. I'm very angry. I'm angry because this was our dream house. I mean, you know, it's not a mansion by far. We lived in town in a 14-room house. We had a large house. I'm living on property that was my great-grandparents'. 10 acres of this was given to me by my father. I will inherit the adjoining property, which is about another 40 acres or so. I'm very angry. I'm angry because they've ruined our lives. For 3 years, we were in heaven out here. We enjoyed living in the country. You know, we didn't have to worry about being confined to our home. We could come out in the yard, enjoy ourselves. I'm angry as a mother because I have to fight now to protect my children. I have to fight to protect my husband. We had no notice that this was occurring. We woke up one morning, construction was underway, and before we knew it, it was online. That building did not go up until, it was not completed until the latter part of February, the early part of March of this year. It took me 2 years of squabbling with the gas company to get them to construct a building that would mitigate some of the noise. So you hear it now, you can imagine what it was like without anything around it. The windows in my house would rattle from the vibration. If you look at the GP5 permit, which this is permitted under, it clearly states that malodorous odors cannot go outside the confines of their fence. If I'm smelling them in my yard, they clearly are outside the confines of this facility.
There are many of these sources that are being permitted in the past 2 or 3 years under these general permits, which don't receive the same kind of scrutiny from DEP. They don't have a public comment period to provide an opportunity for environmental organizations, members of the public to review the draft permit, review the application, see if anything is missing. The general permit doesn't allow for that. I think that needs to change.
What DEP is doing about this?
They conducted their study. As I said, they also did a 4-day study at the site, but it appears from the file that I got from the DEP, there are many holes in that file in terms of inspections, in terms of the permitting processes, those kinds of things. You call, you make a complaint. As last night I came out here at 10 minutes after 10. There was such a smell of chlorine in the air. I couldn't stay outside. I had to go in. My eyes were burning. I immediately went online, filed a report to the DEP. I've not heard anything yet. So they're a little slow at responding. You can't get anyone out here, and I realize budgets are tight, but you can't get anyone out here when the incidents are occurring. So, they come out and the air smells fine the way it does now. We have more of a problem when the air is heavy. When you have high cirrus clouds, the emissions seem to float away, as does the noise. When you have damp evenings or dewy mornings, everything settles in this valley. My greatest hopes would be that it would move. That's not going to happen. I plan to live here the rest of my life. My worst fear is that 20 years from now, they're going to determine that the exposure, and not just me, other people besides my family are experiencing the same situation. My greatest fear is that 20 years from now, they're going to say yes, or that we are going to develop a cancer that they are going to link to this. The problem here is that, we didn't have an opportunity before the adjoining landowner signed his lease. And I must say, he has been very apologetic. I don't believe he realized what was going to happen. And the problem that it was going to pose for us. He was looking at his check. But I would just say, if you are considering signing a lease, you need to, number one, hire an attorney who is on your side and not on the industry side. That is really going to thoroughly examine your contract. And you need to be concerned with the health risks. If you have, your water is well water, you need to be very concerned with that. Air quality is something that I think that has not gotten as much exposure as it should. Former Secretary of the DEP, John Hanger, has said, given the number of permits and wells they plan to drill, we are looking at a serious air quality problem in the state of Pennsylvania. The landowners need to look at not just the size of their check, but how it's going to impact their neighbors, because they're going to have to live with those neighbors for the rest of their lives, or unless they make enough money to move out. And that tells me basically they don't give a damn about their neighbors or the environment or the community in which they live. I do believe, and in particular, I see in Greene County, we are a very depressed county economically. I see the good that it has done, but I also see the harm that it is doing. They have to find a way to balance the two. I truly believe there's a safe way to do this, but I think we need to pull back. We need to look at what New York has done. New York is trying to get it right based on the mistakes made in Pennsylvania. And we need to pull back, and we need to look at how the industry can be done, but done safely. Because as we all know, Marcellus is just the tip of the iceberg. There are 2 layers of shale beneath the Marcellus that these gas companies plan to tap. So we need to get the footprint right while drilling in the Marcellus, because it wasn't right when they were drilling into the Barnett in Texas. Many of those people in that area experienced the same problems that I'm having right now, and that drilling occurred several years ago. And they're just now conducting a long-term study. So we need to pull back, take a look at how the industry can operate, but operate safely.
It's kind of the debate about natural gas in Pennsylvania. It's very polarized. The industry is here. I think at this point, what we need to be doing is making sure, since it's here, that these companies operate as responsibly as is possible. And I think the most productive way to do that, and a way to kind of reduce the hostility surrounding these issues, is one way to do that is companies should be more frank about what the environmental risks are, what the public health risks are, rather than just saying, there's no threat to water, there's no threat to air. The DEP studies showed there's no air pollution problem. To be a bit more honest about, there are risks. There are risks. There are ways to reduce those risks, and we're committed to finding a way to do that.
Everyone thinks that my family and I are unique and that we've not yet filed a lawsuit. We've tried to work. We honestly have tried to work in good faith with this company to resolve the issue. We've asked them for the building and we've asked them for a vapor recovery system, and we can't get any place. And I quite frankly don't know that I have the energy to pursue litigation. But I think that one of the things that needs to be done is that groups of individuals need to start getting together and exchanging ideas. And I think that a class action lawsuit needs to be filed. This is a battle that we're trying to fight now as groups that have gotten together as this does, as they have, or as, myself as an individual. It's exhausting. It is really exhausting. And I would hope that our elected officials would step up and start helping us, instead of this being a fight that sometimes you feel as if you can't win.
Flying above it and being able to go around the area of the Pittsburgh region and see the development is really the only way you can grasp of how this is moving forward. So if you're making a decision on ordinances or anything pertaining to gas drilling, I think you really need to get up in the air and see it for yourself before making these decisions.